welcome to Daily Debrief, brought to you by People's Dispatch. I'm Pragya. Germany recently claimed to have busted a far-right plot that had spread under Berlin's nose, and allegedly its members wanted to overthrow the country's government. And another upset at the FIFA World Cup as Croatia knocked Brazil out, and Argentina has made it to the finals. We bring you an update from Qatar. On December 7, police in Germany raided 150 locations in 11 states and detained 25 people who allegedly were part of a far-right coup attempt. It has claimed to have unearthed a plot set to revolve around the ideas of the so-called Reich Citizens Movement, which rejects Germany's post-war constitution. As arrests continue, the alleged conspiracy so far seems to have involved members in the military, a leader of the increasingly powerful right-wing AfD party, a member of a minor German aristocratic family, and other prominent figures. Germany has called it an anti-terrorist operation, and it has said that members may have been planning armed attacks. But alongside genuine fears and concerns, there's also implications for domestic and European politics. Prabir Purkayastha joins us in the studio with more. So Prabir, on 7 December, the German police raided multiple locations. We've been reading the news about it. A lot of very sensational claims. They've unearthed a plot, a right-wing plot to which planned to ultimately overthrow the government. What do we know so far from what the TV and the papers have been telling us?
Yeah, from reading again what you are saying, the news reports, it does seem to be a very ragtag band and almost comical in the way they were trying to seize power. They decided that a few, not very many in numbers, because after all, the core group is supposed to be 25, 30, 40 maybe. And even the larger group is supposed to be, including all the hangers-on, is supposed to be 20, 21,000 people. So to think that a group of this size would be able to seize power, and that also through a military coup. I mean, it's not really a military coup if a few people in the military join, and they would be able to seize power and install somebody as emperor equivalent who is some minor byblow or something of the emperor last living heir, so to, according to what the news reports have been saying. On the face of it, looks essentially a farcical plot. Doesn't appear to be serious. But the point is, in the recent past, we have seen in different parts of the world, there have been different kinds of right-wing campaigns, shall we say, of all different kinds, but with some common themes nevertheless. Some of it is that there is this plot to make us, the white heirs of civilization, somehow marginalize us. So that is one part of it. The COVID-19 seems to have played a big role in such conspiracy theories too. There are a lot of people who are prone to conspiracy theories anyway. So both COVID-19 and the replacement theory are fertile grounds for them, coupled with a longer or an older history of fascism, if you will, the undercurrents of fascism, if you will, in Europe. Let's face it, Germany is only one part of Europe. In other parts of Europe, the German ideals of fascism had traction. Let's face it, Hitler had support in, say, in Poland. He had support in what is part of Ukraine today, the Galician part particularly. He had support in Croatia. All these had solid fascist groups over there, very close to the Nazi ideology, and even in Norway and Sweden. So this is not, in that sense, this is a much older history of Nazi fascist formations in Europe. So I'm not surprised that they would have 15,000, 20,000 vague supporters of this kind. And AfD, which is the right-wing party in Germany, has made significant strides. But the coup part of it, I'm really not able to understand that how can this be taken seriously with the numbers that the German government is saying. So at one level, yes, I think this is something which should be a what shall I say, warning to Europe that if they go down the route they're going, then what they're going to get is more right-wing upsurge taking place. Why that is so is a different issue. It's partly the fact that they have identified too closely with global capital, and that too with American capital or the United States. So the concept of a European nationhood is at risk. So therefore, the possibility of right-wing of different kinds taking this over. But you know, the what shall we say, the obvious hypocrisy in this is while the German state is willing to come down on this kind of forces, when it comes to Ukraine, it has been supporting essentially very similar forces in Ukraine. And they come with open Nazi symbols on their bodies, on their
uniforms,
clothing, and so on. And it is not a fringe because they're very much a part of Zelensky's entourage. We can see that. And they're welcomed. For instance, in the United States, they have been welcomed in various, shall we say, symbols of the American state, so to say. So, you know, if you normalize one set of fascists or Nazi supporters, and then you vilify another, it means that your message to the general people or to the world at large is not a very clear one, shall we say. Is it just convenience that you want to raise it at this time? Are there other reasons for raising it? Yes, of course, these groups are dangerous, let's face it. But why at this time? And why is it in Germany? But this is okay if it is done if the same set of people do a lot of stuff in Ukraine. That is a lot. That is the, shall we say, the schizophrenic politics of Europe today, which we from outside are unable to understand.
Right, Prabir. Why did you mentioned that the idea of German nationhood, why would there be a sense in Germany that that's a threat?
Well, you know, the German nationhood was always contested. That is it blood and soil nationhood, blood and essentially does it come from heredity? That means I have to be ancient German of some kind, and soil, meaning this is the German soil is what gives us the nationhood. So this has been one kind of nationhood as opposed to be what would be in political science terms called civic nationalism. Anybody who is a member of the state today is a part of our nation. So these have been the two contested nationhood understandings. And yes, of course, those who talk of ethnic nationalism of some kind or the other, which is what German nationalism of this kind is, then harks back to Third Reich, First Reich, Second Reich, whatever Reichs you want. And essentially to say, we are the pure inheritors of that nationhood, and therefore we need a symbol of that nationhood, which earlier was fore, now they seem to be going even further back to essentially the First World War. So
yes,
the aristocracy and the king, the last king of Germany, his distant descendant is thought to be made into the new representative of German nationhood. So this is why I'm saying this is the contested nationalism issue, because these are the two kinds of nationalism which is there. And one of it is racist, it's fascist, and it is not inclusive. The other claims to be inclusive, but the point again is a lot of that merges when it comes to, for instance, Russia, when it comes to Ukraine, when it comes to China, when it comes to a senior leader of the European Union talking of the Western Europe being a garden,
right.
And then the external world of this garden is essentially full of jungles. So we, if we will, come from jungles, and they are, of course, in the garden. So a few vipers aside, okay. So this is the underlying ideology of the, where shall we say, ex-colonial states and neo-colonial states, if you will, and of course settler colonial states, which today is a G7. So the G7 concept of nationalism, what it is the problem. that are they harking back to that we represent the world and humanity by virtue of as the guardian of nations or as the superior nations? Or is it that, it's an inclusive concept? Every nation, every state, every set of people have equal, at least, rights internationally, even if they are not exercised or cannot be exercised because of various distortions, if you will, of economics and of social order that exists. So these are the two larger issues that we have to battle with. The problem of this kind of groups is, of course, its vision is very small. It can only think of going back to 1920. Before that, it cannot look forward. But the problem that we have is the other vision, which is contesting it, also doesn't want to go beyond, say, 40s, 50s, 60s, certainly not to the 21st century. And I think that's the problem as well. Contesting the early 20th century with the late 20th century visions may not be the solution that we should be looking for today in the world.
Right, Prabir. Thank you so much for joining us. Brazil and Croatia faced off in the quarterfinals on Friday evening at the FIFA World Cup in Qatar, and the European team pushed the Latin American giant off the games. Argentina versus the Netherlands was on Friday as well. Another penalty round later, this one ended in Argentina's favor. There have been a series of upsets and surprises at the games, leaving experts scratching their heads and the new winners jubilant. There's also the somber news of the death of a journalist during the high-pitched Argentina-Netherlands match. We caught up with Siddhant Ane, who's at Qatar. Hey, Siddhant, thanks for joining us. So, Siddhant, this morning woke up to news about the death of a journalist at the games. Did you know him? What happened?
At the late game last night, actually, Pragya, the Netherlands-Argentina game, really unfortunate story for the entire, I suppose, fraternity. We have to call them a fraternity, I guess, because it is mostly men who cover football. Grant Wahl, he's a pretty senior reporter, sports writer, used to be a colleague of mine. I was working at Sports Illustrated India, and he was, of course, he spent 23 or 24 years at Sports Illustrated in the United States. One of the handful of US sports writers who actually concentrated or devoted his time exclusively to reporting on football. In fact, if I'm not wrong, he produced the first ever cover of that magazine. It is one of the most, I think, the largest selling sports magazine in English in the world, or it at least used to be. So the first time they actually had a cover, he put Mario Balotelli on that cover of the magazine. He's someone who has done, I think, a great deal to promote football in North America, and also someone who has been covering both the men's game as well as the women's game equally. So I knew him reasonably well. He was a great guy, a very good journalist, very solid in his work, but also very helpful when a young Indian player went to play, the first Indian who went to play in Europe, Gurpreet Singh Sandhu, who's the goalkeeper of our national team. A few years ago, he moved to a club in Norway called Stabæk. And at that time, Bob Bradley, the American coach, was the head coach of that team. So I reached out to Grant, and Grant would put me in touch. We would meet, of course, only at these major events, at the European Championships and at World Cups. So it would be every couple of years. But he was always extremely warm and friendly and happy to help in whatever way he could. It's interesting in a couple of ways. I mean, it kind of points out to, I guess you could put it down to another death on account of the gig economy, because Grant left Sports Illustrated a couple of years ago, and he was working at this World Cup as a freelancer. And, it's been a punishing schedule here for most of us, especially those who are writing for multiple publications, as well as trying to do other kinds of, multimedia offerings, whether it's podcasts or videos or whatever, and working on different time zones as well. So barely getting any sleep, being on your feet all the time, probably not hydrating enough, not getting enough rest, not getting enough nutrition, all of those things playing a role. And also, I have to also quickly mention before we, I guess, move on to the games and things, that Grant was actually became famous because he also brought an interesting kind of blend of activism into a field which is otherwise, pretty much a kind of idol worship. Sports writing tends to glorify figures and things like that. In 2011, just after the World Cup was given to Russia and Qatar, he decided or attempted to stand as the people's candidate for FIFA president, going up against the likes of Sepp Blatter, Mohammed bin Hammam, and Michel Platini at that time. Now, we all know that all three of these personalities have since been, disgraced, clouds of corruption and all of those things. Of course, no one nominated him for that position. It requires at least one member nation of FIFA to nominate you for that position. But he went through the entire process and showed us quite clearly how much fear there is in the world of football administration, and how reluctant even large nations, large football associations, the European countries, for example, are to take on the people who are actually holding most of the power. Yeah, so interesting. And at this World Cup also, again, he was a strong proponent of gay rights, and he was detained for a short while at the beginning of the tournament for wearing a rainbow flag on his T-shirt before moving on. So he always brought great sensibility and sensitivity to his reporting, to his work, and as a person himself.
Right, Siddhant. So, Siddhant, unfortunately, we have to move on to the game itself. And yesterday was quite a roller coaster ride, right? I mean, I think in the Brazil match.
Absolutely. I mean, actually, even this incident, Pragya, of Grant's passing, because it was happening while the game was on, right? And when it was in its most, in that sense, exciting phase. Towards the end of the second half of extra time, and then going in through the penalties and that entire period. So yeah, I mean, if there's any kind of indication that or sort of proof that the game or the show must go on, then there you have it. Yeah, Brazil, unfortunately, in the first game of the day, after we thought Neymar had done,
I know. Yes,
had got the job done, and like finally the people of Brazil will sort of forgive him for all the other drama that he does and appreciate him for the sport that he plays. It wasn't to be, of course. Croatia never a team that you could write off. We were talking about this before, and that like a Croatia-France final might be on the cards again, the way things are going. A repeat of 2018, of course, that would be. Yeah, so and in penalties, again, Croatia won. They did it in the previous round in that heartbreak against Japan, and they did it again. So that set the tone for the evening. And the next game was, many journalists are, because we are so fond of cliches, calling it the Battle of Lusail. There were 16 yellow cards. It was an extremely intense, physical, like old school football game. In the post-match press conference, Lionel Scaloni, the manager of Argentina, called the second half, in fact, ugly, saying that it wasn't a game that anyone might enjoy watching, and we certainly didn't enjoy playing it. But that is how games turn out. Sometimes there was a lot of actually physical battles on the pitch between the players, even both the benches getting into it. Maybe in a way highlighting what is at stake. A sense of history also, because in the past, the Netherlands have lost out to Argentina on penalties. Of course, there was that 1978 World Cup final that the two countries played, where again, Johan Cruyff was there, but Argentina won that game. And we know the details of the horrors around that tournament. So history always plays a part, I think, in some of these big fixtures, but yeah, as it did last night. But Messi in Argentina are through. And I think Messi was also at the press conference after the game, because he, of course, had an assist and a goal, and he converted his penalty. So he was the player of the game last night. So he came to the press box and talked about various things, including, of course, that this is a win for the people of Argentina, who are in a bit of a tough spot. But for a few days, maybe they can forget about all that and just focus on the football. So a chance for Messi to still get it done.
Brazil is going to take some time to sort of heal from this wound.
Recover.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for joining us, Siddhant. And that's all we have for today. Thank you for watching Daily Debrief. We look forward to seeing you again on Monday, and you will find more such stories on our website, peoplesdispatch.org. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.